This is an extremely underrated board game. Why is no one talking about this? Welcome back to the Wolfpack, the best board game community ever. Did I just say that? Yes, I did. Am I biased about it? Of course I am. So before I talk to you all about today's review, a couple of disclaimers. First one is that I did do some sponsored gameplays for Warline. So if you want to see just straight up gameplay, I'll link those down below. Second point is that yes, I did do sponsored content on it, but as always, none of my board game reviews are sponsored at all. They don't even know I'm making this video. So let's get to it. So Warline is a 1 to 4 player high strategy game. There's a lot of stuff involved. And of course, there are asymmetric factions. Now, it is my favorite at 2 players. I don't crave it to play at a higher player count because I feel like it's very tactical and very fast paced once it's just one-on-one. It's like that head-to-head challenge, and I love that. So 2 players, definitely my favorite here. How this game works is first you start out by setting up this board. And that's literally the setup. There's nothing else. Like I know I put out all these fancy little tiles and stuff, all arranged, all nice and neat. No, I don't have OCD, but open the box, you put out the board, you're done. Now, the game begins because what I really love about this game is that the setup is the game. And what I mean by that is that as you are building out your terrain and the outposts and your units, which I'm gonna explain in a second, once you do that process, it's all part of building up to the ultimate warfare. And that's why it's so intriguing and why it's so enticing for us to just run it back and forth, because the setup is different, the army composition is different, and then the build up to the war is freaking epic. That's why I love this game. Now, the first thing you're gonna do is pick a faction, and they are truly asymmetric. You have the Timber faction, which is personally my favorite. Typically, I would go in like the water/ice route, but Timber here, they are so sick because they plant they overgrow all these trees and they move really fast through the forest, and then they pretty much set up a bomb. And then these ramparts will just explode, and it's freaking funny to watch. The Sea faction are your mariners, and they specialize in traveling very fast across the ocean. They flood the terrain, and they also will route you off the map. We'll explain those victory conditions in a second. And then the Frost, they will fly across the map, and they will land across these ramparts and then just descend down and fly down into the field, into these frozen wastes. And then the Flame faction will burn forests down. It's the way that they interact with the terrain. It's so cool because it changes the map, and it also will affect damage. It does damage over time, and it just makes the world very immersive. So that for me is a huge win. After you pick your faction, you're gonna set up the map. And here's where the mind games begin, because you're gonna set up 9 tiles on either side. One player is gonna play as black, one is gonna play as white, and you choose any of these tiles that you see here to set up on the map. Right now, I set up all these forest terrain because for me, I like to put a bunch of forests on the other side because the Timber faction specializes in forests. So for everyone else, they're gonna have to spend 3 points, ultimately like movement points, to move across each terrain. So it takes 3 points for your opponent to move across the forest, and why I like to use them, because for me, it only takes 1 point for me to traverse across the terrain. And then they can do the same thing to me though. So like ice, for instance, will take 4. And then you have the Sea faction, right? If they flood your terrain over here, that's gonna take all your remaining movement. When I heard that you get to set up your opponent's map in whatever way you want, that was a big hook for me, because I'm like, okay then, let me just screw them over. So I'm gonna give myself advantages and give them disadvantages, and they have to deal with it. It's a lot of fun, trust me. Now from there, we're gonna set up the outposts, your 2 areas that you have to defend. So I can put one here, and I can even put one to block the terrain completely over here. And then same with the player that is choosing white. They can set up any terrain in any way they want along these 3 rows, and then for me, these 3 rows. And then from there, we're going to set up our armies. First, we're gonna bolster support by getting a card from the river. So I could take this one, and then I'm gonna draw 1 random one, and then another one will show up just like that. Now, ultimately what these support cards do is that they'll list a big white number on the bottom and then a diamond, a purple diamond symbol up top. The purple diamond you can use alternatively as like your action points. So again, magic. And the bottom right there will give you more points when you're fighting in battle. And then there are a variety of different cards that will give you a lot of different effects that you can choose from as well, or you can alternatively use it as magic showing up top. Now that is one downer for me. I really wish that there were way more support cards. I love the variety that you give, but this deck is a little bit too thin for me, and I wish it was like twice or even 3 times the amount. But I think actually the campaign may even have a stretch goal for more cards that can be developed later on. So we set up our map, we got our outpost set up, we also chose our support cards, and see this build up here? It's getting there, right? It's getting to the battlefield because the final thing that you do is you're going to configure your army. And for me, this is the most fun part of the setup portion because you have a set of 6 dice. All of them have something different. And ultimately, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. 6 arguably isn't really necessarily the strongest, but more so 4 through 6 have unlocked abilities, which is demolition. Because in this game, you can actually build up ramparts and imagine them as like walls that people cannot cross or like move through. So these demolitionists, 4, 5, and 6 can break those ramparts. 1, 2, and 3, they do have the lowest amount of health and lowest attack value, literally because they have like only 1 health and 1 attack. But in exchange for that, they do have the most magic reserve, which means that they can take the most amount of actions. So then in a real game, you're gonna take this screen and put it in front of you, and then you're gonna configure your army that way you have a composition of 21. You just need to make sure that the numbers match 21. So I could have like a 6 and a 6 and a 4. In math, that is 12 plus 4 is 16. I got 5 left, 17, 18, 19, 20, and 21. So I'll do 2 1s, a 3, and a 4, 6, and 6. That's typically what I kind of go for. Now, one important thing you should know is that each unit has access to different abilities. The 6s have access to practically all the abilities, and they have access to the strongest abilities. Mine, for instance, is called Splinter. And what that does is once I can set up some ramparts with my 1 unit on the board, so I can put like a rampart here, and I can put a rampart here, for instance, I can use 6 for a Splinter move, and then this will blow up, and it causes adjacent areas to take 4 damage. Notice here how our units don't have that much health, so it will be very, very overpowering if you're attacking a bunch of low-level units. And the last thing you do before the bloodbath begins is you take turns putting out 2 units at a time. So I'll take one over here, and I can take another one to go over here, and the direction does matter where you're going because there's actually a little sword symbol up top on all these units, and that'll tell you the direction that they're facing. Now notice how I can also stack units too. This is important because when we attack each other, only the top unit can get attacked. Now you might be asking, Tim, we heard about all these factions already. He gave us the rundown for how this game is set up and everything, but how do we actually play the game? What do I need to do to win? Well, on the side of the board here, you'll see the main victory conditions. So the main one that I usually go for is listed right at the bottom. 5 skulls means you have to have 5 of these units taken out. Just wipe them off the board. When they're dead, they will go across the bottom over here. Another victory condition is listed on the right side here, and this is in prison. If you take 3 of your opponent's units as prisoners, you also win. And then the third one, the third main way, is that if you destroy their outpost, which means as long as one of your units is on one of their outposts for 1 full turn and then it comes back to you, then it'll be destroyed, and then these outposts will be taken as a spoil of war, and 2 of those outposts, once they're both gone, then that's also a victory condition as well. Now, what do you do on your turn? Well, you're gonna look at any one of your units that you wanna activate, and if it's a stack, then it can only be the top one. And you're gonna look at how much magic that they have up top. So in this case, number 1 has a total of 7 magic. Now, because it has 7 magic, it means I can take 7 actions. So one action you can take is, of course, move, which is march. So if I march forward, you just look at the red dot on the board, and that red dot will tell you how many points of magic that it's gonna take up. So if I wanna go from here and here, since the arrow is facing up, then that's gonna cost me 1 point, and then I have 6 more points to use. If I wanna go into the forest, normally it would cost me 3 points, but again, because of my ability, Forest March, it only costs me 1, so that will take me 2 points. And then let's say I wanna attack this 6th unit, just because one wants to go crazy on 6. I can wheel, which is a second action that you can take. That's pretty much just causing your unit to turn, and that's 3 points. And then the 4th point, I'm gonna take it to march on over here on top of the 6, and then that's gonna cause me to engage, which is like the core of this game, which is fighting. Now, for the sake of example, let's say I'm playing a 4 against a 3. So let's say I can play this card face down, and then in turn, they can also play a face down card, and then we reveal. So then it would be 4 plus 4, that's 8, and then they also have a 2 support card. So 8 minus 2, that's 6 damage. This unit is going to die and get wrecked. Now from here, that unit is gonna go to the graveyard, and then 4 more, I win the game. So this right here, this green die, if it's on top of the stack, it means my unit would be engaged in battle. But because that unit died, I killed off the white unit and it goes off to the graveyard, then that means that this unit is no longer engaged in battle. And then they gain a status bonus, which is Vigor. Vigor means that this unit is super motivated, and if anyone tries to attack it, it's gonna get only like 1 damage overall. So I basically moved, I turned, I attacked, and if I had any remaining magic left, I can keep spending it to take more actions. So even if combat is relatively simple, I love that each of your units matter and they make a big impact for the 6 that you have. Now here's where a lot of the fun in the game lies, and that is in every faction's asymmetric abilities. So for the Flame faction, for instance, they have something called Fireproof, which allows them to be immune to fire damage. And then they also have Incinerate. Notice here how there is this entire forest of terrain that I set up, right? It's not gonna be good for me because let's say my units were over here, they can actually use Incinerate, which allows them to target adjacent forests. And in this case, it would deal 3 fire damage for every single one of these that are linked up together. So imagine 3, 3, 3, 3, it would just link all this together and then everyone burns except the faction themselves because they are fireproof. Or if I was playing as Frost, I can take all these water tiles, freeze them. So if they had units over here, now they're pretty much stuck because it would take 4 points of magic for them to move from every single piece as they move across the terrain. When it comes down to it, what you're doing is you're doing 2 main actions. You are issuing 2 tactical orders. You're gonna take one unit, have it do its thing, turn, move, engage on top of another unit, gain bonuses for vigor, play out that combat. You can also issue battle arts if you have remaining magic left. So there are 3 other actions that I want to talk about, and then we'll go into my final thoughts about this game. Next one's really cool. This one is Lighten, and it shows how malleable the gameplay really is because you're not just stuck with what you have. Let's say the game goes on and you want to change up your units. Well, Lighten, what it does is you can lower the amount of value that you have for a unit. So if this is a 3, I can make this into a 1. And then you can give that and transfer arms to another unit. So now instead of a 4, we're gonna make this into a 6. Do you already see how many ideas you can get with that? So now with a 6, you can start busting out your super strong abilities with units that are right in front of you. And like what I said earlier, just because your unit is a 1 number doesn't mean it's a weak unit at all. Because again, one of the victory conditions is if you imprison your other opponent's units. So to do that, it's called a route action. And what this does is it will take one of their units and then bring them off the field. So it literally routes them off the board and then they'll be stuck in prison. And then in prison, you can torment them. So each turn they'll take damage. So this 6 will drop to a 5 one turn and then it'll drop to a 4 the next turn and so on. But that doesn't mean your opponent loses that unit until it dies all the way into 1. They can actually send out spies and then extricate that unit, and this one will be saved and brought back to their field. The last action, and for me, arguably one of the most fun and rewarding actions if played correctly, and that is Sacrifice. So imagine if you only had like 2 units left, which actually happened in one game. Say you only have 2 units left, one is like at a 2 or something, and your opponent just has a whole field of stuff going on. So we'll take this off for a second, just so we can show you a quick little example. So what you can do is you can sacrifice a unit. So you'll mark them for sacrifice for 1 turn, and you can throw this symbol on there. Next turn comes around, this unit will die, and it'll go to their opponent's graveyard. But when that happens, now guess what? All that power transfers on over to the 6th unit, who normally only has 2 magic. But guess what? For this 1 turn, it's gonna go super Saiyan. And now this has, instead of 2 magic, it'll have 8 magic. So it's gonna go forward and then engage, and just fight it all off. And that for me is so much freaking fun in Warline. So overall, I honestly don't even have much to complain about this game. Like, one thing is I would love to see more tactical cards here, more support cards included in the game overall, because this one really provides a lot of variability to the gameplay. And I love that even though the focus, yes, is on the main board, I still want more cards to give me alternative strategies. That way I can keep my opponent surprised, because they will know one card that you pick and the other card they won't know, which that part for me is a very fun element, but more of that would be amazing. And then from there, the second thing that I would want to fix is you saw all those actions that we can take, right? Move, tactical, I don't even know the names of it off the top of my head, right? There's like an acronym for it. But honestly, I feel like that right there kind of provides a barrier to new players, because if this game just has 1 card and this one lists all of the actions that you can take, it would be so much better than to rely on an acronym. And then arguably too, all your units have like their own card, which is cool. It's nice that every one of your units has, like the 6 has a card and a 5 has a card, but the only difference is that these cards have highlighted sections for the 6 and then non-highlighted sections for every unit as you go down. So honestly, I feel like you only need 1 card and you can save on having those other ones. Like you don't need 6 cards for like 1 per unit, and instead just create like a player aid card, because then I will see right away, okay, here are the actions I can take on my turn, here are the ways I can win, and then it will really provide a bigger incentive for newer players to keep playing because everything that they have is right in front of them. That right there is honestly the only 2 things I have to complain about Warline, but the gameplay, like you saw how excited I was talking about each thing, because all those moments when I started talking about them, it started reminding me of when I started playing those games with Josh and stuff, and it's just so much ridiculous fun. Like I love that there really is no setup. Like the setup is the board. Get the board out. You don't need to put the tiles out like this, like how I did. You just leave it in the box. And then after that, you just go straight into playing the game. You set up the terrain, you set up your outposts, you build up your units for the army, and you just have at it. And even if battle and combat is simple over here, it works. It works really well because you have a lot of other options in order to meet other victory conditions. You can imprison units, you can attack their outposts, and then every faction brings something drastically different. You burn off stuff with flame, you fly around with frost, you rout people off with sea, and you blow things up with timber. All of those play so differently. And why I really, really want you to at least look at the campaign page and consider backing the game. Again, this is not a sponsored video, all right? It's not sponsored. However, you just look here, the campaign is actually live right now, and there are 2 new factions, okay? There's a Kingdom of Blood, and there's a Kingdom of Gold. This right here is what I'm most excited about in the expansion. I love the fact that there are even 2 more expansions, bringing the whole game to 6 different factions that you can choose from. The solo mode, which I have played in Dragon's War, is very puzzly because then you'll have these giant dragon dice that you'll see here. Look at this. This is the biggest set of dice that I've ever seen. And these dice are the dragons. And what they do is that they'll have like these giant tiles that they come out and attack, and they're very difficult. So the solo mode is all about being able to defeat these dragons, and they escalate like stage by stage. So it is a boss battler in the solo mode, and it's very difficult. So if you like that puzzly challenge with boss escalation, then you're gonna love solo mode here. And then that one also has co-op mode too, which plays exactly the same. You're just adding 1 more player. Then it's up to you to all play together and see if you can defeat the dragon. But the bottom line, I keep coming back to this game, asking myself like, why is this game so underrated for me? And I think if I were to narrow down my reasons, it would be A, it is ridiculously replayable. And I love that it kind of tricks you into playing this game because that build up to fighting is amazing. Like I haven't seen any other game do something like that where it gets you involved in the setup and then it leads you up to the fight. I love that it's not this one-sided battle. It's really a very interesting tug of war because you have your units, and even if you're down to like your last 2, you can sacrifice 1 and make 1 super, super strong and then see what happens from there. Or if you want to play tactical, you can use your battle arts, your different unit abilities, and see like how you can really utilize them with the different terrain that you have set up. And I think variability is such a huge factor in this game because every single session is so different. I mean, I think that's why, because these games are also very fast, they're like 25 to 30-minute sessions. Because they're so fast, because it's so variable, it's just such a fun 2-player game that I cannot stop raving about. And like I said, I don't know why this game isn't talked about enough because it is so underrated, and I really, really recommend you checking out this campaign at the very least, because this is not one that you want to miss out on, especially if you're looking for a very good, highly replayable 2-player game. With that said, I hope you all enjoyed today's review about Warline. It is a game that just keeps flying off my shelf because of how tactical it is and how quick it is to set up. Because as much as I love my big box games, like at the end of the day, it's the 2-player games that get played the most often for me. And this right here is the absolute staple that you do not want to miss. Trust me. If you made it here to the very, very end, I want to know which faction you would play with the most. Would it be the Timber, my favorite faction, the one that blows up everything in the woods? Would it be Frost, descending down from different ramparts and freezing the terrain? Would it be Flame, burning everything in sight? Would it be Sea, flooding the whole field? Or would it be one of the new factions, which I have no idea what they do just yet, but it's also Blood and Gold. Blood here has like these vicious tentacle looking creatures, and then Gold has this giant scorpion. They almost remind me of like a very orderly civilization with that. And yeah, I just can't wait to see what effects and what abilities that these two have in store. So thank you all so much for watching. I appreciate you all as always, and I will see you all in the next one.